So Roshi established this aspiration for 100 years in the future when 3-year-olds are taught mindfulness, and from a very young age we're taught to work directly with our emotions and pay attention. How do you think if that's our aspiration, to have the wisdom of meditation move that deeply into our society so that it's not called Buddhism, it's just called being a decent citizen? What are the next steps?
Marketing. Well, I mean, we have the example of mindfulness-based meditation. We have the example of neuroscience and that whole kind of thing that's happening in the world. So it is going on. How we can join that, I mean, this book is a wonderful joining of that, I think. And to encourage, we have a group at Sing Sing, for example, and it's a modest project. Every Sunday, 2 or 3 Zen students go to Sing Sing and sit with 12 or 14 inmates there. Now, next door, there's a room about this size that's completely filled for the Christian service, but we have a little something there. So I think that's the way it's always been with a new tradition coming in, that little by little, incrementally, we begin to have effect. The strongest, I think, will be in education and medicine. I think those are the 2 avenues right now.
And what was the question? In terms of next step. I see in healthcare, I see a lot of natural joining of especially mindfulness-based methods. And in a sense, even that is too religious for some healthcare institutions. I find that even talking about mindfulness becomes some of the docs, and I have a great respect for physicians, and I also know that sometimes your training requires you to limit the way in which you learn. And what I have found in the institution that I work in is that way of learning is really it's applied so carefully in a very particular context. So mindfulness is outside of that context, but attention is not. And so talking about things in the language in which that context flourishes, the medical context, attention, diagnosis, the kind of attention that one places on using a stethoscope, for instance. That these are small ways in which those who have experience with mindfulness-based methods, and then additionally, compassion, some of the compassion meditations can find their way in, sometimes through the vehicle of poetry, I find. So next steps, the way that I see them evolving, are really knowing enough about the culture that you're in to bring the appropriate response. And I hope that Dharma or Buddhism doesn't dissolve. I guess I have my own bias in that regard, because I think that we don't need to eliminate. I think what we need to is always invest the wisdom, and the transformation is a process that doesn't need to be owned by any ism. But there's so many ways that it can be expressed that I feel some attachment to this one.
Bad mic. Oh, there it is. my mic karma. Did I do something in a former talk that brought this on? I agree with everything that Roshi and Mitra said. I think also that one of the things in studying Buddhist philosophy in as depth as I could that I find missing in some traditional Buddhist philosophies is not just an understanding of personal subjective consciousness and not just an understanding of dissolving the boundaries between self and others through the bodhisattva ideal or what I might call interpersonal consciousness, but it's hard to find in traditional Buddhism a lot of discussion of systemic karma or collective mind, which obviously there's some Madhyamaka problems with the notion of collective mind. But in other words, the realm of culture and society and the systems that we all participate in that actually condition our individual minds. So I'm very interested in developing Buddhist-inspired theories and practices that relate not just with the personal and the interpersonal level of service and the bodhisattva ideal, but also with the collective level of action and activity, like the political arena, and just analyzing the, what does it mean that we live in a highly consumeristic culture? I think Rinpoche is completely right, and I've always loved Buddhism because the onus comes back to you. The rebellion, and I always try to remember that, especially when a master reminds me that the onus always comes back to you, that the rebellion is not really against the world out there. It's against your own fixed beliefs. But at the same time, there is a world out there, and the world out there influences individual beliefs, and we co-create that world. So I'm really interested in Buddhism developing more both theory and practices for the collective level of action and karma as well. So I think that's an interest.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's really important. As you said, Ethan. And I've always been inspired by one Buddha's, one discourse in the Mahayana tradition. It's called the 10 Wheels Sutra. I've always been quite fascinated about that sutra, in which Buddha and his disciple discusses about the idea of social science, governance and commerce and so on. It's really interesting discussion. And so I think there's a lot of, if we look back in the history, there's a lot of movements in Asia from the Buddhist, influenced thought processes of working with the collective consciousness or collective mind in society, starting with the activities of the Buddha himself, right? He changed the whole, the caste system in India when he taught Buddhism, break through the caste system. And it was like a big social pressure to follow that kind of status quo. But he broke through that and, taught in different ways. And so I really hope someday we can have this sutra or the discourse called the 10 Wheels translated into English. And so you all can read it and can use it for whatever way it's beneficial. I think I mentioned briefly in the book somewhere. I don't remember where. You did. Yes, I did. Okay. Thank you.